All right, so hello everyone. Uh, I'm Kamil, a junior embedded systems developer at VMDev, someone who likes reasonable security. Some of you may recognize me from this year's Skips OS Summit and expressing myself through writing documents. However, just a precaution, despite the fact that I will be talking about the ever dreaded NIS2 and something that might sound bureaucratic, today we will not be filing any documents at all. And on the contrary, I would like to demonstrate you how you can unlock your digital sovereignty with Zarhus OS. So as an introduction, I will talk about, in short, what the regulatory requirements are, how the situation looks like nowadays, and what problems still kept arising despite all the mechanisms everyone wants to introduce to secure the world, and how to transform the ever dreaded bureaucratic requirements into controlling your own hardware, your own firmware, and how to provision it securely. So, a very short summary about the NIS2 Article 21. It's about supply chain security and cryptography. So basically, you as a company have to assess the vulnerabilities of your suppliers, your providers, and assess how they themselves perform their developer developer practices. Are they secure enough? And how to mitigate potential risks that may arise from any accidental errors. And in the very case of cryptography, what can you do to do cryptography the right way? Because unfortunately, it's incredibly easy to mess things up, even no matter how hard you try. Well, it happens. So, in the context of your firmware security, let's say that you got your hardware from a prominent vendor that does care about security, but first things first, can you prove that it hasn't been tampered in transit, that nothing bad happened to it? And also, can you rely on most likely closed-source security implementations? Because accidents happen to everyone, even the best can suffer sometimes. So here's a screenshot from CVE details about a vulnerability in the firmware of a prominent board vendor. And also, what happens when someone else takes care of key handling and revocations? Here's a screenshot that demonstrates that no matter what, even a legit Microsoft signed binary could be exploited if it's vulnerable, in the very case that it hasn't been revoked as soon as possible. So how can we even think about satisfying the requirements? Well, we could use open source firmware and also implement like a bunker when all the secure signing takes place that only the most trusted individuals have access to. It does sound simple, but Camille, you might be asking, how much would it cost? How much work I personally would need to do to set things up, to not mess up anything on my end? Because because I don't trust myself to do this the right way, because most likely other giants will take care of it better than I ever could. So, what can I do in this situation? How can I satisfy the bureaucratic requirements? How much paperwork will be involved? How much can I trust the third party vendors? Well, you might recall a presentation from Piotr and Daniel talking about provisioning box. Well, see the little gizmo on the right? This is the Zarhus Trusted Provisioning Box, into which you plug in some USB flash drives, and it automates all the stuff I talked about before. So let's get the meat of the presentation. How to fortify the supply chain? Well, after plugging the USB flash drive and booting the Zarhus OS, you simply run the Zarhus storage create command. You choose your flash drive that you plugged in. Then you set up a password when all the all private keys will be stored. All happens in a compartmentalized air-gapped way, so it doesn't leave the so-called bunker I've been talking about earlier. Once that's done, you simply run the Zarhus prepare command to generate your Intel bootguard keys. Well, about bootguard, here's a curiosity. It enforces manufacturer-defined boot policies, to block any unauthorized boot code. But since right now we're talking about you being in control of your hardware, you act like the manufacturer. So you block anything that you don't unauthorize and consent to run. So once that's done and your capsule gets provisioned automatically, you simply reboot, you go to the Dasharo security options, and you should see that the boot medium is locked and SMM BIOS write protection is checked as well. So the boot process has been guarded, but your way, not some third-party manufacturer way. Furthermore, you can also be in control of your UEFI secure boot keys also by running simply one command. So as you can see here, it resigns the Zarhus OS binaries. So once you reboot, the provisioning box runs the signed images that only you control. So I've been talking about supply chain fortification. So see that thing? These are the digital chains that supply the fortification of the machines that you and only you own and control. So once that we're here, how can we liberate our firmware from third-party reliance? Well, it's time to provision the Dasharo firmware your way with the keys that you've just generated, as I've shown you. The steps are simple. You just download the firmware to your flash drive, you plug it into the provisioning box and mount it, and do the provisioning part. So, how much work can be involved in these three steps? It turns out that it's not that hard as it seems. You simply run a few commands. You download the firmware with a script that the Dasharo team has prepared. You plug in the flash drive to your provisioning box and mount it. It's a matter of simply copying these commands because the labels stay the same. You provision the capsule, and once the capsule is provisioned, you just transfer it to your work machine and use FWUPD tool to deploy it, and you're in control of your machines. So in short, it may sound scary with all the bureaucratic parts and the reliance on third-party vendors, especially when we're considering closed source implementations that act like the black boxes that you can't inspect. But now that we have a way to automate this, do the signing in an air-gapped way with no way of messing up the cryptography part and provisioning the trusted Dasharo firmware, we can be sure that all the ever dreaded bureaucratic requirements are not as scary as they seem initially, because in practice, it's all the matter of using the right tools. So, I'm not going to spoil everything, but as you've seen in the earlier presentations, when it comes to the UI decoupling and the Shara tool suite, I can tell you that only time will tell how the future developments will take place. So that's all I wanted to tell you right now. Any questions?
Well, thanks, Kamil. Yeah, I guess like there is very kind of minimal connection with NIS2. Maybe we can build some better bridge. So okay, let's say we got this provisioning, this secure stuff, secure supply chain, which is under our control. How this, like, let's say there is audit, and how this makes us like compliant, or how the compliance look like in this situation, how you would envision it, or how we can justify that our actions were enough to comply with the NIS2 requirements.
Well, now that we've got the open source implementation, I mean not only the Dashara firmware, which can be audited due to its open source nature, but also the fact that we have an air-gapped machine which can't permit any key leakage. We could show this to the auditors that we are in control not only of the hardware, but also an open auditable platform that anyone in the world can audit. And therefore, we did audit the supplier because due to its open source nature, anyone can do it.
interesting. Will have only to show, and they will believe, or are there any some tests defined or verification procedures or whatever we should make sure our software follows, and they will check. Uh, yeah.
Well, due to the nature that the most protected stuff out there that I'm not allowed to talk about runs the Sharo, it's a matter of proving that it's indeed used in practice.
Yeah, I guess like the part of the audit typically um is okay, what kind of protection is expected from you, because like who you are in the, what's your profile of your organization, and based on that there is scrutiny added, uh, and of course if you are very high profile, then there is also very detailed scrutiny in audit, including okay, where are the procedures for that, how I will reproduce this, how I will reproduce that. And I guess like that's the evidence that someone audited have to deliver to the auditor, to get the really sign off, yes, I checked that, I verified that's true what they're saying, in this evidence, that evidence is correct. Yeah, or am I missing something, Camille? Like, is it like maybe this looks a little bit different?
Well, also due to the nature of the provisioning box working completely offline,
Mm-hmm.
it's also way higher, way better protection that most companies can expect. Especially that, especially because it works pretty much out of the box. You just plug in the flash drive, you provision your capsules, and that's all there is to do. There is no manual intervention needed to set up cryptography properly because it's set up properly out of the box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess like that's benefit, because if someone delegate that to external party, or delegate that to some service provider, then that's kind of drawback, and definitely lower level of uh, lower profile. Okay, thank you very much.